Well, hey there, folks, and welcome to the next part of the Reader Magnet series. Pardon the mess here in the background. I build computers for fun and then send them to people, and I have one that's just about ready to be packaged up. So that's why that box is sitting there. I want to talk a little bit about the cover that you're going to want to have on your Reader Magnet. And I think something that you have to think about with the cover is that it needs to actually look like a a high quality production cover for a book. Um, Something that I'd like to tell when I talk about Reader Magnets is a story about washing cars at a funeral home. So my father was a funeral director, and a lot of times when us kids wanted a little bit of extra scratch, we would beg to be able to wash some cars at the funeral home because we didn't have a ton of money, and then it would be coming from the funeral home and not from dad. And he would every now and then say yes begrudgingly, and then admonish us to do a perfect job so that he doesn't have to do it over again, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we, like, every time we were teenagers, so our best may not have been the best we could have done, but every time we would do the best we could. We would like really do a good job, like better than we would ever do on any other car that we'd ever done. And every single time, dad was like, found some water spots on the bumper. I had to buff them out, or he would be like, you didn't, you missed a bit of dirt inside one of the wheel wells, um, or something like that. Like really minuscule things that were like car show levels of clean. And one time I said to dad, I'm like, why are you so obsessed about making sure these cars are perfectly clean? I mean, no one's really going to notice this stuff. And he's like, look, at a funeral home, the vast majority of the people that interact with us don't ever come to our business. The only thing they see from us is ourselves and our vehicles. It's like, and if our vehicles are not perfect, then when the time comes for them to entrust us with another loved one that these people might have encountered, they're gonna be like, well, they didn't really care for their vehicles, so they're not going to care for my loved one. Um, and that was like, I never thought of it like that. I'd never thought of how strong and how important this first impression was to the business. And I really do think that funeral homes aside, the gravity of that particular decision aside, I feel like that first impression is actually that important for everything. Um, like I have actually, let's take a look at this. This is foam that is used for shipping a computer, right? And this foam is multi-impact foam. White regular foam is single impact foam. If you take like regular white foam and you package something in it, like you get a computer or something that's packaged in it, and that box gets dropped on one particular corner, that foam can absorb that one impact. And if it gets dropped again, that's it. That foam is now compressed. It's probably broken a bit, and that now the shock is going to go directly to the computer inside. So this is multi-impact foam. It's more expensive for the manufacturer to produce, and what it tells me is that they care about what they've made. Um, and it makes me more likely to purchase from them in the future because it means I'm more likely to A, get a computer in good shape, and B, if I have to ship it in this box might actually be able to handle it, because I mean, this is a total segue, but you're going to get used to this with me. um, is that boxes that computer cases come in are designed to hold an empty case, which is like maybe 20, 30 pounds, whereas a fully built computer can be as heavy as 50 pounds. So you having a box that could actually ship a whole computer decreases the costs quite a bit, and it makes me much more inclined to use this manufacturer because they've done a good job. Um, and that first impression, like I said, matters. And the first impression that people are going to have with your reader magnet matters, because it's going to cause them to decide whether or not they want to continue reading from you. And it's going to start at the cover. If your cover doesn't look professional, you've already started off on the wrong foot. Doesn't matter how good your story is. It's if your cover doesn't look professional. And if you're not sure
what a professional cover looks like. And some people aren't. Like some people could be like, yep, professional cover, not professional cover. I totally get it. Some people are like, I don't know, I made my covers myself and they look just fine. And then I paid someone to make them and those look good too. But I can't actually tell why one would be considered professional and one wouldn't. Then you can't make that decision for yourself. If you're like, yes, I can totally tell, it's font kerning, it's text placement, it's image framing, it's all these different things, then that's sort of like some of the stuff that goes into determining if a cover is well done. Now, that's not to say that not people can't make their own decisions. Obviously, at a certain point, the cover has to speak to you because you should be an example of your readers in most cases. So if the cover does not speak to you, chances are it's not going to speak to your readers as well. But the cover needs to be professional. It needs to be on brand, on genre, and convey major tropes. That being said, it could be a little bit simpler, a little bit cheaper. Maybe you don't have a complex background, or maybe your main series has two characters on the on each book. You could maybe do one on the reader magnet because oftentimes multiple characters on a cover are going to be more expensive because the artist has to do more work sourcing images and licensing them and cutting them out, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you can go a little bit less expensive in those regards, but you can't skimp on the actual like quality of the cover at all. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to look at a little bit of one of my presentations, and I just have to get to the right screen on it. We're going to be talking more about this. If you take other courses about like genre and trope, which is a very involved course, you'll see more of this. But this is going to get us sort of like the point across that we need for this stage of the journey. So basic PowerPoint slideshow, share. Okay, so hopefully this is like okay to see. But what we're looking at here is espionage thrillers. I feel like this is like something that people don't think about that much. So often we talk about other genres. I want to talk about something fairly specific here, but that is also very clear and easy to make out what's going on. Espionage thrillers. You look them up, look at them, you'll discover that there are no serifs on the font. Every font is sans serif. The serif is like the little things hanging off the T and the S and the little things at the top and bottom of the I and all that. Those are called serifs. Sans serif font tends to convey thriller, science fiction, action, adventure, that sort of thing. Romance, fantasy tend to go more serif fonts or script fonts, perhaps. And sometimes you'll see a mix of them, like on Bad Boy Billionaire Mafia Romance, there might be a mix of both fonts to kind of have that thriller element from the sans serif font and then the serif or script font to try to convey the romance and softer elements of the story. But it's like a big thing of like big blocky letters versus soft flowy letters. And they actually mean things to people, not because they have any inherent meaning, but just because of how they've been used for so long. People have sort of just got this instinctual response to what the fonts look like and then what the book is going to look like. So we can see here very standardized stuff with these thrillers. But the other thing you'll want to notice is that they always thrillers are actually the ones that do this the least, but I feel like it's a good example still. The character has room to breathe. In these ones by Saul Herzog, by the way, these covers by Saul Herzog redefined the way that thriller covers were done to the point where you see this David Archer one down here. You'd think it's a Saul Herzog cover. And David Archer's been around for a lot longer than Saul Herzog. He got his books recovered to align with the shift that Saul Herzog made. So what's standard in a genre could get changed by just one author who shifts the paradigm a bit. But you'll see the character has a lot of room to breathe. There's a lot of negative space or empty space around the text. The text fills the width of the cover. The author's name, actually everything is always uppercase. Unless you really know what you're doing and you're breaking this rule on purpose, every single thing on your cover should be uppercase. It should all be title case, which is all uppercase. You should never have lowercase stuff on the cover at all. Like I said, unless you're specifically trying to break the rules or set a new trend, or maybe you're like in this niche of a niche that actually does have a different paradigm. But chances are, if you go and take any book off the shelf that you have on your shelf, or look at the top 50 books in any genre that you're in, you're going to find that they're all uppercase, unless there's maybe some 99-cent BookBub book that has some lowercase stuff in there as well, or mixed case typically. So here we are, a little bit more close up. The other things you can kind of see is what else is being conveyed on this cover. I jumped ahead in my talking points a bit, but a character in motion portrays action and adventure. A character standing still portrays less of that. We've got this car racing down the road. Obviously, it's careening toward the character. Chances are there's threat, there's risk. We know it's somehow outside by a big mountain range, by the setting and all that. Feels like a one man versus all comers sort of scenario. It's a car chasing after him. There's two people in the car if you look closely. They're in the wilderness. He's alone. It's going to be like one of those like almost like a last stand feeling kind of story. And different books, if you look at them down here, you'll see that they are oftentimes doing similar things. Although Thriller does oftentimes have static images because they've sort of got this weird thing where they can just show like a bunch of bridges or something like that, and that's a Thriller book. But it's all about setting and mood and a feeling. And like all advertising, it's all about the feeling that you're trying to create in your reader. I mentioned this already, how this is what David Archer's books used to look like, and this was like the norm with thrillers: character facing away, silhouetted, indistinct character. Boom. Saul Herzog comes along, character facing camera, smaller character, action pose for character, because Saul Herzog nailed it. Came out of nowhere, and book one sat in like the 1 to 3 position in several subgenres, several categories for years after it came out, and author came out of nowhere and did that. All right. So, you have to do a bunch of looking at your genre, understand what the major tropes are, look for the commonalities and similarities. If you want more details about this, we have the genre and tropes course where we literally spend quite a bit of time on this, and there's homework and research and all sorts of things, and like drilling down into different things to pick out and then look at. But you should also be able to get a feel for it as well. I'm sure you have one already because you live in this. So let's talk about authors to examine. We're going to look at domestic thrillers for that. You don't want to be looking at authors like Geneva Rose, who's got 67,000 reviews. Chances are that she'll sell a ton of books regardless of what's on the cover. You want to try and find up and coming authors. And chances are that none of these are up and coming, none of these are indie. And the reason why you want to try and find indie is because chances are they had smaller marketing budgets, so they had to make their success on the backs of how well they were nailing genre and trope expectations, not on the size of their marketing budget. It's also interesting seeing this one by Lynn Lau Butler. Like that looks like a under 3. Like that's got to be at least a 3.8, no 3.7. Still got 5,200 reviews. It's kind of wild how some really popular book can do that. But sometimes a really popular book like reaches beyond its core audience and then finds a bunch of people who buy it because they're supposed to read it or something like that, and that they don't like it. But chances are what I would really look for is I would be looking for indie authors whose books are not currently on sale and have like a mid-range number of reviews. Not low, but in like domestic thriller, maybe something in like the 5 to 10,000 range. But at the same time, your book still needs to fit in, right, with what you're seeing here. So, look for the people that are scrappy, pulling themselves up by their bootstraps, but also at the same time, make sure your book will look like it belongs on this bookshelf with everything else. And then, of course, lastly, we're just going to talk briefly about how genre cover set genre expectations, right? No Home for Killers. I mean, it says a thriller on it. But obviously that just looks thrillery, right? We got the girl, she kind of looks like she doesn't give a crap, but there's this threatening looking guy reflected in her glasses. It's got the word killers in the title. Your title is part of your branding and your genre expectations. Frost by C.N. Crawford. Like this screams romantic fantasy. It's a bit of a shift, right? Like that didn't used to say romantic fantasy, but it's so well known now that it screams romantic fantasy. Dark Elf Secret Baby is one of my favorite ones for this because like there's no way to misinterpret what this book is about, right? It's like it's right there in the title. It's a secret baby fantasy romance, probably dark themed fantasy romance, probably bad boy story as well, right? Like it's all right there in the cover. You can just pick up so much of this stuff right off the cover. And then Into the Stars by James Rosone, it feels like a desperate attack. The planet's being bombarded. There's ships everywhere. It feels very Last Standy. And then we've got all the troops in the back of the ship here as well. So we know there's going to be some ground pounding action and stuff like that. And then Rise of the Republic, book one of Rise of the Republic, we feel like, okay, we're launching into some sort of cool, amazing struggle here going on. It's gonna probably follow, a series of intrepid heroes as they do overcome odds, because it's a rise, right? It's a struggle against. So that's all important stuff to consider as well. But these covers are showing all of that, and your cover and your title and your series name need to be doing their part. They need to be pulling their weight when it comes to conveying all this information. So here's some bad boy romance. This is all mafia. And there's a bit of a mix in here. You can see that this is where I talked about how sometimes in bad boy, more action, adventure-y, thrillery kind of romance, you're going to see a mix of bolder fonts and bolder text mixed with script text. Prince of Hate is all sans serif. Wicked Air is a mix. And this one was deliberately done like this, right? Like this lower uppercase thing was deliberate. It was a deliberate breaking of the rules to show that this is a bad boy, and the Wicked is sort of an angle. Mafia, Ortega Mafia, the Enforcer. I'm actually not sure which is the title of this and which is the series name. And the Degrees of Innocence, same thing, like the blocky, thrillery kind of font, and then the innocence is spelt out in the script font. And the colors actually matter too. In this particular genre, is shifting away from red and going almost exclusively to white and gold. So those colors can matter too. So you gotta do that research and figure it out. But again, like I said, the main point here, the main thing that we're shooting for is to just be conveying that genre trope information and be doing a quality cover. So, do spend the time and energy and money on it, because like I said, if you don't get people on board with what you're doing, with your story, with your commitment to quality, doing it, and you don't do it with the reader magnet, you're going to lose them. You're not going to get them later on. You have to hit it with this book. So that's all we have here. I hope you guys have a fabulous time digging into some research and doing a little bit of thinking about how authors and marketers are conveying this information, and then work on seeing how you can replicate that with your own stories. All right. See you next time.